Hello, 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 my radicals, and welcome back to another episode of Keeping It Radical with your boy, Aaron Robinson, also known as the Big Radical. And today we are here for part 2 with my really good friend, Sheri. Sheri, thank you very much for being here again.
Thank you.
For part 2. There might be a part 3, 4, 5, 6.
I like part 2. I'm hoping for part 3. I got a lot of stuff to tell you.
We can always do a part 3. But Sheri, okay, so in part 1 we talked a lot about how we met, your faith, your spirituality, and some stuff that you really had to overcome, some challenges. In part 2, you have been dealing with the big C word, cancer, for the last, I want to say, couple years. Or is that where you started to find out and go before treatments? Or
No, so I've been dealing, so I was diagnosed in July of this year. I found out that I had breast cancer. Okay. But the last 2 years, I haven't been feeling right. I've also been feeling off. Well, you know, it's funny because as you get older, it gets dismissed. You know, it's just, you're just getting older. You know, your body's changing. You know,
Is that a human error or is that a medical system error?
I don't know. I think if you have the right doctor, it's not a medical error. But sadly, I had a buffoon for a doctor, but I've now since fired him. But yeah, but I think it depends. But you know, the littlest thing, like in May of this year, I was golfing and I carry my clubs because, you know, physical fitness.
Yeah.
And so I was carrying my clubs and I went to my doctor and I was like, I got a really bad pain in the back of my neck and it's just on the left side and it's in my shoulder. And he's like, stop carrying your gloves, you're 50. And I was like, oh, good point.
That's what his response.
Yeah, and I'm like, hey, good point. I'm like, hey, he's like, it's just strain on your back. And he goes, and I get it. Like, I am 50 years old. I probably shouldn't be hauling my clubs around. But I'm like, I don't care. I'll do it till I'm 80. Like, until it actually hurts. I don't want to do it. But it hurts, so I stopped. But, you know, little things. Like, I've always had a pain in my right side. Or my right side. And he would always dismiss it as, you know, oh, you're constipated. Or, you know, you're not even a fiber in your diet. Like, the littlest things,
pain?
right? Yeah, like just the discomfort, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, you're constipated. It's in your right side. And because our intestines are huge. Like, you know, we're basically all in intestines.
Basically.
But yeah. So what ended up happening is, give you kind of the short version, sort of. So in April, May, I wasn't feeling well at all.
Yeah.
So in April, was feeling quite sick, but Maddie was suffering from seizures. And so I was up all the time with her, so I thought it was just fatigue and stuff, stress from work, whatever it was, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, and just for the radicals that don't know, if they didn't listen to part 1, Maddie is your dog.
Maddie was my beautiful golden who's
retriever.
Now in heaven with her dad. Yep, and I'm jealous. Yep. But I can't wait to meet her again. So, so I'm in April, and then May, Maddie passed away. And then I was like, okay, I'm just stressed because Maddie passed away, right? And then in June, I started, my chin started getting numb. So there was a spot on my chin that was numb. And I was like, and I'm like super clumsy. For those people that know me, I can walk into a door. And so I thought, did something happen? Like, did I bang my chin? Did I do something stupid? And I was like, no. And so that was on a Monday. And then by Wednesday, it was getting worse. So I went to see my doctor, and he was like, oh, you have this triaconal nerve thing in the side of your head. He goes, so he gives me meds. My doctor's quickest to push meds. And went home, Googled it. I'm like, yeah, that's not it. Mm-hmm. I'm like, because that's a pain that's supposed to be like 3 nerves in your face, and it's called like a suicide nerve pain where people actually want to kill themselves because it's that bad. And I had no pain. It was just, felt like I went to the dentist and my chin was numb.
Yeah. Like almost like the pins and needles numb.
Yeah, but it was like literally like it felt like it was frozen from the dentist, but it was like only like down the middle and on the right side. And it would go like either from the middle of my lip to the outside of my lip. It was the weirdest thing. So I went and saw my doctor. He dismissed it. So then I went and saw I saw a neurologist, ER doctor, my dentist, my chiropractor, a dental specialist. Mm-hmm. Like, I saw so many people, and they've all said, you know, it's just nerve damage because you grind your teeth. A dermatologist, and there's like, they don't, it's nothing, give it a year, and the nerves will come back because you just probably grind your teeth. And I was like...
That seems to be actually the excuse for a lot of stuff I've heard.
Yeah.
Is it's like, oh, no, you grind your teeth. It all happens when you sleep. You're not sleeping right. And
Everything's blamed on sleep and lack thereof. Yeah. So I was like, okay, so then the end of June, I was sitting at my desk at home, and I lost sight in my right eye, and I had this really sharp pain in the side of my head, and I was like, hey, this is freaking me out. So I called a friend of mine who's a triage nurse, and he's like, sweetheart, and he came and he triaged me, and he's like, hey, you're not having a stroke. He goes, so he took me to the ER. They rushed me through. I had an MRI and I had a CT scan, and they were like, hey, they're like, well, we see spots on your brain, but we think that you might have MS. So I was like, Kate, so they would want to do a spine tap. So I was like, Kate, so they did a spine tap. They're like, that's what might cause your numbness. So I was like, Kate, they did a spine tap. I've definitely earned my keep for the medical system over the last 6 months. But so they did the spine tap, came back clean. And so then they're like, yeah, you don't have MS, so we think it's just from migraines. So I'm like, Kate, because if you look at a migraine, MRI of a migraine, you all have white spots on your brain from where the blood cells were and stuff when you have a migraine. It's amazing.
Oh, wow.
The body's an amazing thing.
Note to self, I've never gone for an MRI or a CT scan.
It's okay. I'm going for enough for both of us, so we're good. Yeah. So then the neurologist came to me and says, yeah, you don't have MS. We have no idea what's wrong with your face. Give it a year. Yeah. And I was like, hey, went home, and I was like, hey, this is right. So I Googled it. Dr. Google. Who everybody talks smack about Dr. Google, but Dr. Google saved my life. So everything shows up cancer. It says it's a numb chin disease. You have 9 months to live. You're dying.
Oh my God.
And I was like, hey, well, I'm going to disregard the latter of that.
Yes.
And I'm just going to look into it. So everything pointed to cancer. It was like lymphomic. It was leukemia. It was all the big cancers. So one of them was breast cancer. So I was like, well, I can try that one. So I laid in bed on July 3rd. And I gave myself a breast exam, and I found a lump.
Can we actually just stop there?
Yeah.
I have noticed, because this is something because guys too should give themselves exams. I don't think a lot of people know how to properly examine themselves. Besides me, I'm just like, okay, well, I'm feeling my chest, and I don't feel anything. But you really have to go in there and and I don't think enough people are educated or know how to properly check yourselves, because it's just you go to the doctor.
Yeah.
And the doctor does it, and it's almost like we sit here being like, but if I can feel, what am I feeling for? What am I looking for?
Yeah.
Not enough people know how to do
They
that.
don't, and it's amazing, because even when I was doing it, I was digging right in there, but I have cystic breasts, I have very dense breasts.
Okay.
So everything feels lumpy.
Oh.
So, and it's the weirdest feeling, because even when I went to my doctor and I had a lump, he's like, well, your family suffers from cystic breast. Don't worry about it. There's no breast cancer in your family. You don't need.
There was no breast cancer in your family.
No.
Oh wow. Okay.
No. So they're just dismissed it. Yeah, whatever. And so I'm like, hey, they're like, you don't need it. It's probably just a cyst. It's all in your head. Whatever. I'm like, hey. So I never got any MRI. My last mammogram was 10 years ago. So when I was 40. So because the system kiboshed all that, so now you only get mammograms if you're above the age of 50, or if you have cancer in your family, breast cancer in your family.
We were talking about this at coffee, and you kind of almost dumbfounded me, because I was like, I thought over the age of 40, that's when a female or anyone should be going once a year, but you're telling me no.
It's 50.
It's
50, and it used to be where they used to send women every year to go get mammograms, but because they found that it was backlogging the system, because a lot of women would find something, or a lot of women were going and it was backlogging the mammograms, to get a actual appointment, because people were going in and getting them and they didn't need them. But if you go on these forums, I'm on a couple Facebook forums, and these women are actually in their 20s. 30s, and they're having breast cancer, and they're getting it at stage 3, stage 4, because for a cancer cell to be detected, the cancer, the tumor in my breast was 1.5 inches in size, and you got to think there's probably millions and millions and millions of cancer cells in my breast to make that lump that big. So, and it doesn't take long for that to happen. So
if you leave it for you leave it, you were saying that you were experiencing body stuff for a year or a little
it's
bit
just
more.
I knew I'm very aware of my body. I go to bed at night and I do inventory. I'm I wiggle the feet. I'm how does the feet feel? How does your legs feel? I do an inventory every day, because I'm hey, I know my body. I'm in it every day, so I know when I'm sick. So the chin thing went, got the mammogram done. Found out that I had breast cancer. They sent me for a biopsy, found out I had breast cancer. yeah, and then I went to the Cross Cancer. They ended up, I went to see a surgeon. Surgeon was like, "Yep, we're gonna put a port into your breast. You're gonna do chemo. You're gonna lose all your hair, and then we're gonna do chemo, and then then we'll do radiation after and stuff like that." And I was okay, and I'm like, but
Which is generally the general plan.
yeah, and I was like, hey, I'm like, but is it linked to my jaw, like my numbness? They're like, no, they're like, that's something separate. I'm like, okay. I'm like, you're doctors, apparently you know best. I'm like, you don't, because there's medical papers on the U.S. that say that it points to breast cancer, but sure, I'll just...
That is actually also a big disconnect,
Yeah.
is from the U.S. to Canada.
Oh, huge.
Massive disconnect.
Huge. Yeah.
Which really, we're basically almost like, I know our governments are the same, but we're pretty much like the same society.
It is. But
it's just mind-boggling.
It's amazing what will go across the border and what won't. Like, it's phenomenal. Like, all the treatments in the U.S., they work. Like, we'll talk about the drug stuff in a minute, but so then I went to, then they sent me in for a CT scan because they wanted to check the rest of your body to make sure that your body can handle, your liver and stuff can handle the chemo.
Okay.
So when they sent me for the CT scan, they called me and they said, I was actually at my bone scan when they called me, and they said the cancer has spread and it's on your liver. And it's bad. You have so much cancer on your liver that we can't count the spots. There's that many. So I was like, all right. So then I went to my family doctor, and I knew it was bad because he's like, Sheri, like, this is really bad. And he goes, but we'll see what your labs do, stuff like that. Because all my blood work at this point was showing like an athlete. So nothing showed in my blood work ever that I was sick. Like, in 49 years of life, nothing has ever shown that I was sick.
And you go for regular physicals.
Every year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's something I need to get a little bit better at.
Yes.
Well, maybe do a physical like
we're
once
gonna
every
talk,
3
We're going to talk about that because that's important. Yeah. That's a whole other podcast. So then did that and went and saw my oncologist, and I have the world's best oncologist and the best family doctor now. So went and saw him, and he's like, regardless, I had a PET scan booked, and he's like, regardless of what the PET scan shows, we're going to start your chemo on September 7th, and this is what's going to happen. And I was like, okay. Went for the PET scan before I even got back before I even did my first chemo. It was the middle of August, and they said to me, they're like, hey, we need to talk about the cancer. And I was like, what's up? And they said, you are stage 4. They said your cancer is in your breast, your liver, your spleen, your bones, and you have a tumor on the back of your neck that's pushing on your C3.
Did that, when you heard that and they said the neck part and the spine part, did that not instantly infuriate you? Because that was the first original symptom that you really experienced?
Yeah, but when I look back, the doctor that I no longer have, I was having trouble with my shoulders, and I was having bone pain all the time. And he was shoving cortisone into my shoulders. Every 3 months, I would get cortisone shots. And he's like, it's just, you have arthritis in your shoulders. But he never sent me for any type of bone test, bone scan, nothing.
Bone density, anything?
Nothing. And now that I've had chemo and, that the chemo's working, I have no bone pain in my shoulders anymore.
Amen.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
So it's amazing.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. So then the biggest thing I had and I struggled with was, oh my God, I know this is going to sound vain, but was, oh my God, I'm going to lose my hair.
That, I don't think that's vain at all,
Yeah.
Sheri. I think that is a very honest question or concern, because that is, that's an appearance thing. And we were talking about that, I think that's a complete normal thing. That's what a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah. You know, it's funny, when they told me I had cancer, I didn't cry. And when they told me I was going to lose my hair, I cried. Because I was like, because for women...
You have great hair.
Well, it's very curly.
I love the curls.
I have a weave now. Yeah, no, it's my hair, but it's awesome. But, no, so when they told me that, I got really upset, because for women, our hair is our identity. And so it wasn't just that. It was a matter of, you're going to lose your hair, you're going to lose your eyebrows, you're going to lose, you're going to lose everything. And it was like, oh my God, I'm going to look like a white cue ball. It's going to be, as hot as they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, no. So I had time.
Confidence is such a big thing too. If you don't have confidence,
you know what? It doesn't matter.
It bleeds into everything.
It doesn't matter. If I lost all my hair and lost all my eyebrows and everything, it doesn't matter how much confidence I have. It doesn't matter. I didn't want to look sick.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing is, who wants to look sick?
No one.
So I did research, and I went online and I was like, how to prevent losing your hair if you're in chemo, and I found cold capping. And so I researched it out the yin yang, because that's what I do, and I researched my cancer out the yin yang too, and so the cancer that I have is I'm HER2 positive. So it has nothing to do with my genetics. It has nothing to do with my family. I have no breast cancer in my family on either sides. It's basically my cells are producing too much protein, and so they're turning into cancer. So it's just basically your body turning on you. So there's nothing I could have done to prevent it at all. So, and I lead a normal, like a healthy life. Like I eat clean, I train every day, I go to the gym every day. Like there's no reason for it, but it's just your body turns on you.
So when you train and you go to the gym and you work so hard to keep your body healthy and you get this news, did you feel a little bit like your body betrayed you?
Yes. Yeah, I was very angry. Yeah, because I was like, why? But then you question everything you do. It's like, okay, well, I allow myself McDonald's twice a month, and I'm like, is it that?
Oh my God!
Was it the McDonald's? And then I'm thinking, I love liquid grapes, which is wine. Yeah. So my friends always ask me, Sheri, what kind of wine do you like? And I'm like, anything made with grapes.
Oh my
I'm
goodness.
like, I'm good. Yeah.
Red or white is the true question.
Anything made with grapes.
Okay.
Yeah, if it's made with grapes, I will drink it. Yeah. Yeah.
Sheri, that's awesome.
So I questioned everything, and it was horrible, like horrible. But in the end, like I asked my oncologist, and I have the world's best oncologist. His name's Dr. Fenton, and I couldn't have asked for a better oncologist than him. And I asked him point blank, like, what did I do wrong? And I was like, and I cried when I asked that, because I was like, I'm like, what'd I do? And he's like, you did nothing, Sheri. He goes, there's nothing, we can't explain why this happens at all. There's a actual movie with Harry Cochran Jr. called The Living Proof.
The Living Proof, okay.
And it's actually on Apple. You can buy it or rent it. And it talks about HER2 positive cancer and the drugs for it, and kind of explains that it was like basically a new cancer that's come up in probably the last 10 years. They didn't have a cure for it. Like over 10 years ago, people just die. And now they have a lot, because there's a lot of science going into it.
Yeah.
Because the fact that it is cell-related and is your body turning against itself. And so they can fix cells, but they can't fix like hereditary stuff like that, because it's stuff that just happens. So
yeah.
I have, out of the cancer, I have the worst cancer because it's very aggressive, but in all, science-wise, it's highly researched. So
sitting here, and we talked so much about this, and I've done actually a lot of research, and it was funny. A couple nights ago, I was at my parents' house, and like me and you talked. Like my dad went through lymphoma and still is going through it, but he's out the other side.
Yeah.
But when I was talking to him the other day, I said to him, I was like, you know what, Dad? I know like when you've kind of had lymphoma for, we'll say, almost like 20 years, but in 2019, that's when it hit hard, and that's when he really started his treatments and everything. He went chemo, stem cell transplant, the whole shebang. I don't remember him gradually losing hair over that time. I just almost feel like he was one day just bald.
Yeah.
And so I said to him the other day, I was like, Dad, maybe this is me being naive, or maybe like I don't feel like I forgot it, but I don't feel like there was that. Did you shave your head? And he's like, no, I didn't. And I was like, I remember you with hair, but I was thinking about it. Did you shave it? Did you let it all like go? And he was like, well, to be honest with you, my hair kind of stayed, but it wasn't until he did the stem cell transplant where that was everything left.
Yeah.
And during that time, I think that was the first time my dad wouldn't say it, but even from a male perspective, even just keeping like 25% of his hair was confidence.
Yeah.
The second he lost his eyebrows and had that egg-shaped white head, that was when I knew my dad was having confidence issues, and that was where the cap started to come on. He didn't go out. COVID, it was COVID during that time too, so it made him not want to go out. But whether you're female, non-binary, or male, like the hair topic is huge. And so I told him about this cold capping.
Yeah.
And I was like, Dad, like, you need to listen to the podcast. Sheri's really going to explain it. But I've done a lot of research, and a lot of cancer research seems very difficult.
It is.
But cold capping, you put a cold cap on your head
Yeah.
and it saves your
your hair
hair
follicles.
follicles, your hair cells.
So with certain cancers or certain chemo treatments, what ends up doing is like basically it's like putting turpentine in your body. Like it's a poison they put in your body to kill the cancer, and they hope your body can handle it.
You actually told me that after you did chemo, it was about 4 days after the amount of alcohol that's actually...
the amount of alcohol that's in. I'm on doxycycline.
Yeah.
Is the chemo that I'm on, and the amount of alcohol, like, it's phenomenal. Like I'm actually drunk. Like, Wednesday's my chemo day. Thursday I have like superpowers. It's bizarre. Then Friday I'm literally feels like I had 5 glasses of wine. Like, even when I try not to drive on Fridays because I literally feel intoxicated.
Wow.
And then Saturday I have a hangover, and then Sunday I'm fine. But the amount of alcohol is a lot of alcohol in chemo. Yeah, which is funny because one of the medical procedures in the U.S. For liver cancer. Again, I don't have liver cancer. I have breast cancer that spread to my liver, so those are 2 different things. But
I was actually going to ask about that too.
So for liver cancer, what they actually do is in the U.S. is they go in with sterilized alcohol, and they actually inject the tumors with alcohol on your liver.
Really?
Yeah. So it's amazing.
Oh.
Yeah. It's a sterilized, very highly sterilized form of alcohol, but they'll actually go and inject it on your liver. So, but with the cold, so back to the cold capping. So when you go through chemo, what happens is when the chemo goes through your system, it burns all your hair follicles.
Yep.
So then all your hair falls out. And normally it happens 21 days after your first chemo. Normally you're bald after
That's
your first
about 3
chemo.
weeks, and you do about a treatment every 3 weeks.
And I do treatment every 3 weeks, yeah. So I'm now on treatment. I just finished treatment number 5, and I'm going on number 6 on December 21st, and then I'm done my chemo. Yeah.
Oh, Sheri.
And I still have this sexy wave. Yeah. So
I love it.
I have a lot of hair. Yeah.
If I didn't know you before, Sheri, I wouldn't know.
No, it's good. I can't wait to blow it out again. June. But anyway, so with the cold capping, what ends up happening is I'm using the Penguin cold caps. It's a lady out of Toronto does it. She did the cold capping to save her hair during chemo, and then they brought it into Canada. It's popular in the U.S. and the U.K.
Well, that was a lot of the videos.
Yeah.
Came from the U.S.
Yeah. So they have different types of. There's polar capping. There's digital capping. There's different versions of it.
Okay.
But mine, I uses the Penguin cold capping, and so what you do is you get these 3 caps. You rent them. It's not a cheap investment. It's like $500 a month to rent these things. And then you put these cold caps on dry ice, and they're about minus 37 degrees, and you put them on your head, and you do it an hour before chemo, during chemo, and then 5 hours after chemo, because your liver's processing the chemo. And they're changed out every 25 minutes.
And actually, that's what we were talking about at our coffee. And through my research, when you first told me about the cold capping, I was like, holy crap, like, what is this? And I researched it, and then when I started really going down, like, I even went on to TikTok cold capping. You go down the TikTok hole, and you go into YouTube and Google. I didn't realize that it is a process. I thought it was just you put on a cold cap, you sit there during your treatment, you keep that cold cap on, but it is an hour before, it's during your treatment, it's after. And what you said to me actually is you have a friend that helps you.
Yeah, my friend Karen,
Your friend Karen, and just how hard of a job of replacing all of that stuff and keeping it up, never would have known.
No, like her hands are tired after. Like she's actually had like thumb pain, and her hands are cramped up and stuff after, because there's bands you have to put on, and like, it's a lot of work, because that cap has to be snug on your head for it to take effect. And
so what the cold cap virtually does, if I'm to
so it puts your hair follicles into hypothermia, so that the chemo can't burn them.
So does the chemo not? So in the videos I watched, it almost explained it as that because you hibernate your hair follicles, it almost just pushes the chemotherapy away from that area.
Yeah, because they're frozen. So normally, they can't burn it if they're frozen. So it basically freezes your hair follicles.
And how did you learn about cold capping?
I went online. I wanted to save my hair. I thought there's a holistic thing for everything.
Oh, God, for everything.
So, and I thought there's got to be something that I can save my hair, and then I just came across the cold capping and researched it, and gratefully I had time because the cancer had spread so much. They had put off my chemo for a month. So I had a whole month to research things, and so I researched it and found it and ordered it and prayed to God it worked, and well, damn, it worked.
Well, your hair looks great, Sheri, and that was something that we were talking about, and that's actually some backlash that you have gotten is how great you look through like stage 4 cancer and the treatments and the cold capping. You actually get a lot of, I don't want to use the word hate.
I would say, I think there's people are in disbelief. And it's shocking to me that people, I've lost a lot of friends because people question it, which is unfortunate. But people just don't believe. It's like, you can't have cancer. It's like, well, no, I do. Like, even my family doctor was like, if I didn't see your medical records and the person in front of me, he goes, I would never believe that you're as sick as you are. But me being me, I'm a very strong person. So even if I was sick, I'd never tell anybody.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I would make it so that nobody knows, because no one's anybody's business. But I tried to tell people to reach out for help with friends and stuff like that, but people were in disbelief. Like, I've had to show people my PET scan because they didn't believe me.
And you shouldn't have to do that, Sheri.
No, I'm not friends with those
That's
people
like some
anymore.
Real Housewives crap. Like at the reunion where they want receipts.
Right? Who was that? Who was that woman on one of the Housewives?
Oh, Vicky Gunvalson.
Yeah, he faked cancer.
He faked cancer. It was a whole thing. And like, I'm a Real Housewives addict.
You and I.
Do you love your Housewives?
I do.
Scott hates that I love my Housewives, and he always looks at me. He's like, "This is not reality. Like, this is so stupid."
I have a big screen TV. Come on over. We'll watch it.
Oh my God! But it's funny. Scott looks at me, and I'm like, "Are you gonna go upstairs and work in your office? Because I have some Real Housewives to catch up on." Anyways.
Yeah. No. I think that's a lot of the stigma. Like, people, like, I don't look sick, and but it's phenomenal. It's wild but it was tough because I realized who my friends were. Sadly, when I found out I had cancer, and we might have to do a part 3 to this, but when I found out I had cancer, a lot of the medicines for HER2 are not covered.
This is something else you were talking to me about.
Because they're experimental. So, like, I'm on Herceptin and Perjeta, and then my doxycycline is my chemo. And in most situations, like, for most people, the Herceptin is covered. But Herceptin has only been in Canada for probably the last 4 years, and it's just been covered over the last 2 years because it was still deemed experimental. Now, that drug is $5,000 a bag. So the Perjeta, which is the other drug that I'm on, same thing. That drug is $5,000 a bag.
And we're talking about the bag.
The chemo bag.
The chemo bag. Yeah. Like, it's $5,000.
Like of IV dripping, $5,000 bag. And if you have it and you need it, it's not covered.
Maybe my thought process, but don't you think that's a little half-assed backwards? I feel like if it's experimental and people want to try that, but it boggles my mind that you're paying out of your pocket for your treatment in a country where we literally brag worldwide about our health care.
Yeah, no, it's not covered at all. But in certain situations, sometimes it can be covered depending on, I guess, what cancer you have. But in most cases, it's not covered. And when I found out it wasn't covered, I'd asked them, and they're like, it's just experimental. It's not covered. And even going forward, a lot of the oral meds that I'll need down the road, they're still considered experimental. They won't be covered either.
Really?
Yeah. Until they're actually, like, Herceptin only got noticed in 2021, was it recognized, and that was covered. And so Perjeta is still considered experimental, so it's not going to be covered. We're hoping it'll be covered in the next couple of years, because normally it takes a few years for it to be covered, and then it'll be fine. But yeah, for the most part, no, it wouldn't be covered. And a lot of meds aren't covered. Like, and if you can't afford it, you don't get it.
So, and I don't know if this is going to send us down a rabbit hole, Sheri, but like, if you can't afford that, what do people do? How do they afford? You just simply don't get it.
You cash in your RSPs, you beg friends for money, you ask family for help. Like, it's not covered.
when you look at the economic status of where Canada is now, and like just with self-employed people and whatnot, and throughout COVID, people losing their jobs, being laid off, like that on top of cancer and everything else, like that can be a bigger burden than the treatment and the disease.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. And it's phenomenal. Like, I was blown away. I couldn't believe it. When I got a letter from Blue Cross saying, no, you're denied, it's not covered, I was like, I kind of looked at it and went, okay, whatever, the Cross Cancer is going to take care of it. And then they phone me and they're like, Sheri, you're not covered. And I was like, holy, like, wow. I'm like, all right. I'm like, so what do I do now? And they're like, you pay out of pocket for it. And I was like, okay. So then, of course, this another part is like, I panicked because I was like, where am I going to get $15,000 in a drop of a hat like that? Like, you know, I have money tied up in RSPs. Like, how am I going to pay for it? So then I started a GoFundMe page. And the backlash on that was phenomenal. Like, people making rude comments and ignorant comments. And I just sent it out to my friends. And so I ended up canceling it and refunding everybody's money. And I was like, no, I'm not doing this. Like, I kind of had wished that I never made it known public that I had cancer. Because I wish people never knew. Because now it's, people are ignorant.
When, as a society today, I think we walk around and if you don't see it, it ain't true.
Yep.
But back in the day, like when medical research wasn't as great as it is today, like when someone went through this, you could physically see them go through that. Yeah. Now, with different treatments as well as like there are not millions, but thousands different types of cancer. Yeah. The treatments are all different. And there's experimental and whatnot, but it's still, we're in that society place where we judge a book by its cover.
100%, yeah.
And if you look great, which Sheri, I think you look amazing. Your hair, you like, just everything about you is great.
Thanks.
It's unfortunate that people take how great you're looking and turn that into a negative, and they're like, oh, but you should look worse.
You know, it's funny, when I golfed this summer at my chorus, I had people come up to me and like, you have the two responses. You have the, you know, like, you look good for someone that's cancer, like, you know, good on you kind of thing. And then there's people that are like, you look good for someone with cancer.
And you get like the side eye.
Know, and I'm like, are you questioning me or are you asking me? And it's like, but Sheri, you have all your hair. Like, how can you have cancer? And I'm like, well, would you like me to tell you how, or are you just going to be ignorant?
You know,
like, so I've lost, I don't have, you know, given the career that I have a low faith in humanity to begin with at times. And
I think all of us do.
And this did not help.
Wow. Like,
at all. Like, I was shocked by how many people, and even now, like, it's amazing how many people just, they don't believe me.
I think, too, it's just, unless you're in someone's shoes, you don't know what they're going
through. Like, I literally carry my PET scan with me.
Oh, Sheri, well, I don't need to see that.
No, I know that. But, like, I've gone, like, I had a girlfriend come to my house, and I showed her my PET scan, and it was like, because she didn't believe I had that much cancer. And I was like, here. I'm like, it's right there. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry I doubted you. And I'm like, well, let's go. She's like, where are we going? I'm like, you're out of here. I'm like, we're done.
You shouldn't have to do that, Sheri.
I'm like,
no one should have to
I shouldn't have to explain. Like, it doesn't matter who it is. Like, when I tell people I have cancer, that shouldn't be, do you really? Like, it's like, do you not, like, what have I done in my life that you would question that I have cancer? Like, I've never asked for help from anybody in my life. And I'm like, and now you're questioning that I say I have cancer? Like, you know, and then I've had a girlfriend that goes to my appointments with me, and the only reason why she wants to go is because she wants to be in the now, or in the know. She wants to know things. It's not, I don't think,
it's not like she's coming from a supportive place.
No, not at all. And, you know, and then I get judged with things that I've said, or, you know, she questions, you know, like, it's not right. Like, it shouldn't be like that. So now I go to all my appointments. She went to my first appointment, and now I go to all my appointments by myself, because I'm just like, no, like.
So when you go for your appointments, are we talking like your chemo appointments?
No, my chemo appointments, Karen comes with me, because my ice capper.
Yeah.
She's my best bud. She's a sister from another mister. Yeah. And she's amazing. So she comes with me all my chemos, because she has to do my cold capping. But any medical appointment, stuff like that, I go by myself. Like, sitting there and finding out you have stage 4 cancer and you're considered terminal, I just went, okay. So I was like,
probably the person that you would bring with you to that would probably have a worse reaction
than
you, and you'd almost end up consoling them.
And that's the biggest thing, is the one thing I found is, like, when I found out I have cancer, I spend more time consoling people
Than getting consoled.
Than getting consoled. Yeah. And it was the same thing when Chris died. When I told people that Chris died, I had to say to them, I would phone them up and I'd be like, hey, how you doing? What's new? Like, are you okay? And they're like, yeah, I'm great. How are you, Sheri? And I was like, actually, Chris passed away. And then they're like, oh my God, oh my God. And they were in shock. And then I was like, okay, it's okay. You're going to be okay. Are you all right? And I was consoling them. And then I remember my girlfriend Jodine said to me one time, I was on the phone and I was doing that. And she said to me, she goes, are you consoling somebody on the phone? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, hang up the phone. She goes, they should be consoling you.
Mm-hmm.
She goes, that's bullshit. And I was like, oh my God, I never thought of that. But now telling people I have cancer, it's the same thing. It's like, oh my God, I don't know how to handle this. I don't know. I'm like, really? I'm like, how about you just be there for me? Like, I don't want, and I always tell people, like, I don't want your sympathy. I want your support. Those are two different things.
That was actually something very big that I learned with my dad and his treatment was the more we sat around that kitchen table and talked about it rather than just making life normal for him and supporting him.
Yeah.
That I almost found was the biggest downside to everything, and I think that almost made him get more in his head. Was like, oh my God, the questions, like, we're constantly just, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
I want to go in it. I want to fight this. I don't want to ask.
Yeah, and I want to stand on the tallest building I can with the biggest microphone, and I want to scream at people and tell them, like, this is my journey.
Mm-hmm.
This is what happened. You need to educate yourself. You need to advocate for yourself. You need to keep positive because, we're going to end this interview on an amazing thing because the chemo is working.
Yep.
Like, and like, positive thinking and your diet and, people just need to, like, I want to, like, I can't talk about it enough.